The story begins aboard a spaceship hovering in outer space near a planet. The captain asks her crew member, Sunja, if they're in the right place, as the surroundings seem off. Sunja reassures her that the location is correct. The planet ahead of them is indeed their destination, Earth. Another crew member, Robert, finds the situation odd, noting that while they are in the right spot, the planet appears to be drenched in radiation and devoid of oxygen. The captain is skeptical that a high-value criminal, a senior member of the notorious Black Blood Gang, would hide in such an inhospitable place. She's frustrated with Robert for possibly providing false information, but Robert insists the intel is accurate, having been obtained when Howland hacked the main system of the beggar sect. The captain then asks Sonya for his opinion. Sonya, while working on some repairs, remarks that if Howland indeed came to Earth, it would be a suicide mission because the oxygen levels are dangerously low and radiation levels are off the charts. Curious, the captain asks if a human could survive there. Sunja explains that with advanced radiation shielding and a high-capacity internal energy drive, someone might last about 6 hours. The captain then seriously questions Robert, asking if he's willing to stake his life on the accuracy of his intel. Robert hesitates, unable to commit, but the captain doesn't seem to care. She warns him that if the criminal isn't there, he'll be in serious trouble. Sunja then reports detecting a faint sign of life below the Earth's surface, prompting the captain and Robert to commence their search. They arrive at the designated location, with Sunja staying behind to monitor the ship and provide updates. The Earth has become a barren wasteland, and they find themselves at what was once known as Mount Da. The captain is surprised to see the infamous Mount Da, which Sunja explains is the origin of the Mount Tai-Star system and was once considered a legendary sanctuary by the old Martial Alliance. The captain scoffs at the thought, mocking the old leaders of the Martial Alliance for letting such a sacred place fall into ruin. Robert remarks that the Alliance never does anything unless it's profitable. Sunja then informs the captain that she is standing precisely where the life sign was detected. Although nothing is visible, the captain kneels and places her hand on the ground, speculating that whatever is buried there must be alive. She then activates her internal energy drive, causing an explosion that reveals a deep hole in the ground. After the dust settles, Sunja confirms that the life sign is still faintly present, and there's a sizable space beneath them. Ignoring Robert's suggestion to use an electronic ladder, the captain dives into the hole, with Robert following reluctantly. They soon discover a massive door with an inscription written by someone named Li Mu Chin. Robert can't understand the ancient language, so the captain asks Sunja to translate. Sunja explains that the text reads, "Thus the world fears me and imprisoned me with the great Dharma teachings. If you clumsily try to awaken me, death will greet you first." Robert assumes the criminal is behind the door, but the captain dismisses his idea, noting that the inscription is far too old to be from their target. Despite the warning, she decides to open the door, thinking there might be something valuable inside. They are startled to find a figure sitting at the top of a staircase. Although it looks human, they can't be sure what it is. Driven by curiosity, the captain approaches the figure, which is covered in a thick beard and seated in a meditative pose. Robert asks if it's alive or human, doubting that it could have survived being buried for 2,000 years. The captain doesn't answer. She cautiously touches the figure's nose, but there's no reaction until suddenly, there's an electric spark. The captain is stunned, but before she can react, the figure releases a powerful wave of energy that shoots out of the ground, nearly destroying their ship in space. Sunja, alarmed by the sudden energy surge, tries to contact the captain, but gets no response. Amid the dust and chaos, the captain coughs up blood, having sustained internal injuries from the explosion. She is in shock, struggling to comprehend what just happened. She sees Robert unconscious on the ground. The mysterious figure appears before her and demands to know who she is and why she dared to awaken him. The captain, still in shock, can't answer. Figure speculates that she might have come to challenge him and questions whether a martial artist strong enough to face him has finally emerged. He urges her to speak and explain her reason for awakening him, but she doesn't understand a word he's saying. Realizing the threat, she activates a real-time translation mode. The figure raises his hand to kill her if she doesn't respond. Sensing the danger, the captain desperately uses her powers to defend herself. The clash of their powers is intense, and though she manages to block the attack, she is left exhausted and nearly powerless. Her system warns that her energy drive is nearly depleted, leaving her vulnerable. The figure critiques her technique, recognizing it as the Quantum Golden Summit Divine Art and the Red Mist Divine Palm, but notes that her skills are impure, suggesting she learned them through theft, calling her a grave robber. Enraged, he begins to levitate, furious that a mere thief disturbed his eternal slumber. The captain, frozen in fear, watches helplessly as the figure prepares to strike again. However, to her surprise, the figure suddenly collapses. Confused, she turns to see Robert regaining consciousness. He speculates that the figure died from exposure to radiation without any shielding. But Sunja, monitoring from the ship, informs them that the figure is still alive. With normal breathing and pulse. The captain is shocked and wonders why it collapsed. Sonya explains that the figure likely fainted from energy depletion, it was starving. Later, back on their ship, Robert is incredulous that the captain brought the mysterious figure on board instead of leaving it behind. He reminds her how dangerous it was, even comparing it to a radioactive cockroach which would at least have some value. The captain, however, insists the figure is worth a lot of money. Though the others have no idea what she means. She asks them what the most valuable cultural heritage is today, and Sunja replies, ancient. The closer a martial art is to its original form, the higher its value. The captain confirmed Robert's observation, explaining that this individual was likely an ancient martial artist from 2,000 years ago, a legendary period when martial arts were at their peak. Even the most basic FG grade techniques from that era could fetch at least 10,000 credits. But this person wasn't just at a low level, they were an unimaginable grandmaster, likely S rank or even higher. Robert was stunned, realizing that if the person truly was an S rank, they'd struck gold. But then he asked the crucial question, what if the person wakes up? The captain confidently told him not to worry, boasting that she had bound the individual with celestial silkworm thread, a material so strong it's used for spaceship repairs and even the head of the shale insect couldn't cut it. However, to her shock, the individual easily broke free and, with a terrifying killing intent, furiously rebuked them, saying, how dare you lowly grave-robbing thieves try to desecrate me? I will tear you to shreds. The captain and Robert immediately assumed a defensive stance. But to their surprise, Sonya suddenly appeared before the individual with a tray of sausages. They couldn't believe their eyes, but amazingly, the person's anger subsided as they aggressively devoured the sausages. While they watched in disbelief, the captain asked Sonya how he came up with such an idea. Sonya simply replied, he's been starving for a long time, so the best thing for a hungry beast is sausage. Hours later, the captain explained everything to the individual, clarifying that they weren't grave robbers but bounty hunters who accidentally woke him up. They explained that this was now 2,000 years after his time. After centuries of conflict, humans nearly destroyed the world and chose to live in the skies. While things have since stabilized, weapons, including nuclear arms, are forbidden with only martial arts allowed. The individual was surprised and admitted he had no idea what a nuclear weapon was. He then asked what this era is called. The captain replied, this is the year 1105 of the galactic calendar. The man was shocked, asking, galactic? Does that mean you all live in the sky? The captain confirmed this and added that he should consider himself lucky for waking up after 2,000 years. However, the man lashed out, demanding she speak respectfully, reminding her that he was not someone to be addressed lightly. He angrily asked if she wanted to die for deceiving him. But they all pointed out the window, showing him the view outside the ship. The man was stunned when he saw it. The captain then told him that what he was looking at was once where he lived, but now it was utterly ruined. She patted his head and asked, now that you've seen it, do you believe us? The man, exuding killing intent, replied, even if I wanted to believe, I can't. There's no way I can accept that the land I'm standing on is round. The captain was disappointed by how astonishingly ignorant he seemed. Suddenly, Robert noticed a foul smell emanating from the man's body. The captain, pinching her nose, told him he could learn more later but first needed to take a shower, and maybe trim his hair, since they would be staying together for a while. The man had no idea what a shower was, so the captain explained that he needed to take a bath. Hours passed, and they all stood in front of the door, waiting for the man to finish. Robert joked that they should have left his hair alone, fearing something mummified might emerge. But to their surprise, when the man finally stepped out, he was an incredibly handsome figure with a sculpted physique. As he dried his hair, he asked if there was more of what he had eaten earlier. They were momentarily speechless, still in disbelief. The captain eventually asked, who are you? Sometime later, they traveled through the Milky Way with the man, now revealed as the protagonist, mesmerized by the view. It didn't seem like the sky at all, although he once lamented the world's narrowness. He never imagined it could be so vast and strange. The captain then playfully pinched his cheek, asking, how old are you? Just so you know, hibernation age doesn't count. Minutes later, at a star cluster in the Milky Way called PS, inside an asteroid space tavern known as Wild Crane Inn, the protagonist was voraciously eating sausages. Robert couldn't believe how much he was consuming. Sunja explained that the man had starved for 2,000 years. So Robert joked that he must be making up for 2,000 years worth of food. Sunja replied that judging by how much he was eating, that might just be the case. The protagonist finished his meal just as, elsewhere, the captain met with the innkeeper, Wang the 18th. She told him she was looking for a broker who was both rich and tough because she had something extremely valuable to sell. Wang, smoking his pipe, asked how valuable it must be for her to be so anxious. She replied, "How much would a full collection of 2,000-year-old martial arts manuscripts be worth if they were all originals and all less rank?" Wang was shocked by what she said. Minutes later, after she left, there was silence. One of Wang's guards asked if what she said could be true. S-rank originals from 2,000 years ago would be incredibly valuable. But Wang dismissed it, saying it was worth 0 credits because if such things existed, one book alone could buy a planet and more. Yet here was a mere mid-tier bounty hunter claiming to have found a bunch of them. He deemed her claim nonsense and instructed his guard to kick them out. The captain returned to her cruise table and asked Robert where Sunja had gone. Robert replied that she went to buy supplies, apologizing for mistakenly referring to Sunja as male earlier. He then asked the captain how the negotiation went. She excitedly said it went well and that Wang would contact them immediately once he found a buyer. She glanced at the protagonist, surprised to see he had eaten all that food by himself. Robert remarked that, luckily, he had just stopped eating. The captain, not knowing how to express herself, admitted that if it weren't for the potential profit, she would have abandoned him. Suddenly, the door opened, and several people dressed in purple and black entered, exuding an aura of majesty and mystery. The captain was shocked to see them. They were members of the heavenly demon sect. The large man leading them scanned the room with a device over one eye, searching for someone. The captain and Robert observed them discreetly, recognizing the man as Sanhan Wu, the leader of the Red Wolf Squad. Robert was surprised to see the Red Wolf Squad, knowing them as the inspectors of the demon sect, but had no idea why they were here. The captain told him that the squad specializes in tracking, so they must be pursuing someone. She warned him not to make eye contact, as it could be problematic. The protagonist asked if the demon sect she mentioned was the heavenly demon sect. She nonchalantly asked how he knew about the heavenly demon sect when he had been asleep for 2,000 years or if it had existed back then. He didn't reply, but he was surprised that people weren't fleeing. If they were truly from the demon sect, people should be in a panic. But the captain told him there was no need to flee. Although the heavenly demon sect had its quirks, they prided themselves as the foremost orthodox sect in the entire universe and were indeed the best. The protagonist was in disbelief but also elated that the heavenly demon sect had become an orthodox sect. His distant and empty dream had finally come true. Wu continued scanning the inn, searching for someone, as some people looked on confidently while others hid their faces. With his face hidden, the man was ordered by Yu to look up. As the man complied, Yu's scanner activated, revealing his identity. A male with an internal energy of 52.7 Celsius, proficient in the 5-star Blackbird martial art, and wanted for robbery and assault, making him a level 2 criminal. Yu told the man that it was his lucky day since he wasn't their target, but advised him to surrender to the Martial Alliance to avoid future consequences. Unexpectedly, our protagonist began patting the man's head, overjoyed as if his seemingly impossible dream had come true through the efforts of the younger generation. Everyone in the inn was shocked, unable to believe what they were witnessing. The protagonist admired the young man's achievements, hugging his head while expressing sympathy for the hardships the younger generation must have faced to reach such heights. Yu, barely containing his anger, asked the inn's patrons if the protagonist had any intelligence issues. Robert nervously stepped forward, stammering that the protagonist didn't have intelligence issues but that his social skills were somewhat lacking. Yu then turned to the protagonist, calling him child and remarking that it was his lucky day too, because if Yu had sensed any martial energy in him, he would have already been reduced to pieces. He attempted to remove the protagonist's hand from his head, but it wouldn't budge. Perplexed by the immovability of the protagonist, Yu realized that brute strength wouldn't work. He activated his internal energy, maxing out his Blood Wolf demon art, and furiously demanded that the protagonist stop fooling around. The intensity of Yu's energy surprised everyone, even his underlings. However, the protagonist swiftly returned to stand beside the captain and Robert, completely unaffected by Yu's powerful outburst. Yu was incredulous, wondering aloud if he was in poor condition. He then demanded the protagonist's identity, shocked that the protagonist was still alive despite Yu's clear intent to kill him instantly. To his astonishment, when he tried to retrieve the protagonist's details, everything came up unconfirmed. Gender, internal energy, martial arts, none of it registered in the system. It was as if the protagonist was a pure natural being with no internal energy, yet somehow still alive after being attacked. The protagonist calmly told Yu that it appeared he had mastered the Blood Wolf demon art, a lower-level technique among the heavenly demon body cultivation arts. However, he noted, Yu's internal energy and Kai were not in harmony due to a flawed training method. The protagonist offered to personally correct it, calling it the opportunity of a lifetime for Yu. But unlike others who might immediately prostrate themselves before the protagonist, recognizing the truth in his words, Yu called him a lunatic and attacked with his red wolf demon claw. The protagonist effortlessly dodged the attacks without even moving from his spot. Yu unleashed multiple slashes, then switched techniques from Red Wolf Explosion to Red Wolf Tremor Wave and Red Wolf Ghost Claw, but nothing worked. The protagonist, faster than Yu could imagine, began analyzing Yu's strengths and weaknesses while dodging. He observed that Yu had sufficient internal energy and precise form, but something was off. Finally, as Yu attempted another strike, the protagonist grabbed his head and slammed it into the ground, commanding him to stop his nonsense because his skills were crude. Everyone in the inn was in disbelief. The protagonist then lectured Yu, saying that although he had learned the technique properly, he hadn't truly understood it. True martial arts, he explained, aren't just about imitation but about adapting and making them one's own. He told Yu to get up if he understood, but there was no response. After all, how could anyone get up after having their heads slammed into the ground with such force? Yu's underlings, also in shock, rushed forward to take down the protagonist for daring to lay a hand on their platoon leader. What followed was a brutal confrontation. Hours later, in District 32 of the Heavenly Demon Sect, the scene from the inn was replayed on a screen. The district commander, Zhang Rto, couldn't believe what he was seeing. Yu and his entire squad had been knocked out cold. The senior elder, Zhou Chan Ro, who had come to report the incident, informed the commander that Yu and his squad had suffered severe bruising but were not in any life-threatening danger. However, Rto didn't consider this fortunate, seeing it as a humiliating defeat against an unknown stranger. Chan Ro confirmed that Mu Qin, the protagonist, wasn't registered in the Martial Alliance database, though his companions were. They were a group of bounty hunters known as Seville, who mainly dealt with B-class or lower petty criminals. The team was led by S. Young, known as the Blazing Devil, a well-known bounty hunter with ties to both orthodox and unorthodox worlds. Despite the incident, the Seville crew had left Wild Crane in ***** could still be tracked. Chanro suggested sending a pursuit team, but the commander decided to handle the matter personally. He pressed a green button, bringing up a screen that displayed a figure. The person on the screen addressed the commander, asking if there was a request for their Greenwood group. Meanwhile, sometime later, the captain and her crew were navigating through the Milky Way. Mu Qin, now identified by his name, sat calmly, holding a knife and fork, waiting for his meal. The captain, S. Young, and Robert stood nearby, watching him. Robert nervously remarked to S. Young that she must be just as scared as he was, considering how Mu Qin had effortlessly subdued Yu and the Red Wolf platoon with a single blow, despite them being A-rank martial artists. S. Young, trying to maintain her composure, boastfully claimed that she could also win if she fought them seriously, although she acknowledged they were at the lower end of the A-rank spectrum. Robert added that he might have been able to scratch them a little if he put his life on the line. But Mu Qin had swatted them aside like flies. S. Young then approached Mu